you'll have the recording available to refer to later or to share with colleagues if they couldn't make it. And so today, and one other bit of information as well, if you have a question, please enter it in the Q&A as opposed to the chat, because the Q&A does get recorded along with the recording. And then if we don't get a chance to answer your question during the presentation, I can get back to you afterwards and get those answers for you. So again, put your questions in the Q&A panel as opposed to the chat, and that way we'll be able to answer them for you. Now, I am doing this on my own, so if I don't see it right away, bear with me, and I'll try to monitor that as we go. But if not, I will certainly get back to you after the fact. So I'd like to start out with, first of all, a poll question just to get a sense of who is in the audience. And so the first poll I'm going to launch, and bear with me, I haven't done this on this platform before, so if I mess this up, I apologize, but let's give it a go. And hopefully you can see the poll question up there now. Please just enter your response. And once we get enough responses here, we can carry on. Okay, I think everyone was very quick on that one, so that's great. We got all the responses. Okay, as I expected, I think most folks are on Sage 300, so I'll focus my attention on that. This was intended to be for both Sage 300 and Sage Intacct people, and I may touch on some Sage Intacct stuff as we go, but the primary part of the presentation will be on Sage 300. So next up is, who is North49 and why should you care? So we've been around in the Sage world for many years. Started way back in the ACPAC Plus days. If anyone's been around that long, that's the DOS version that was out, from the 80s, and grew up, of course, over the years, acquired by Computer Associates and then subsequently acquired by Sage, and we now are Sage 300, and in its various names that have come and gone throughout the years. We've created a whole bunch of products over the years in that environment, and subsequently sold pretty much all of them to Sage a few years back. And they actually contracted us to write them directly into the Sage source code. So we do have a very intimate knowledge of the Sage 300 source code. And in the past few years, we started to migrate our e-commerce platforms, primarily the customer portal, into Sage Intacct as well. North49, mid last year, end of May, I think it was, we were acquired by a company called Evo Payments, and they are a global payment processor, so credit card payments, ACH payments, that kind of thing. Shortly after that, another company called Global Payments announced their intent to acquire Evo Payments, and that should finalize probably this month or early next. So North49 went from a very small company, 15-ish people, maybe up to 20 at points, to a company that had about 2,500 employees, to now global, having 25,000 employees and a global presence. So that's great. I mean, from our perspective, that means that we'll have a lot more resources at our disposal that we can bring to bear on our products. And it also means that we can complete the cycle and offer payment processing along with our e-commerce products. So that's who we are. And what do we do? So today we're going to focus on AR automation. And through AR automation, how we help facilitate that is through our customer portal. And the customer portal is really just a means for your customers to be able to log in, self-manage their account, make payments on their account, and things of that nature. And the beauty of that is it helps to reduce your day sales outstanding, meaning reducing your receivables, because when you make it easy for your customers to pay, they do tend to pay you on time more quickly. And in the process, you're also reducing all your administrative overhead to deal with those payments. And just a bit of back of the envelope calculation I did when I was sort of going through this slide deck. If you look at all the work that's involved in taking a customer payment, so let's say either the customer contacts you or you contact them. You're on the telephone with them, you collect their credit card information. Hopefully you're not jotting that down on a piece of paper. That would be a very bad security thing to do and non-PCI compliant. But you get the credit card information, and you're either on, if you're using a payment processor now, you're on their virtual terminal, or you have that little pad that sits in your office and you're typing that into that little terminal. And then you get a post back from the gateway. And that is something that you then have to post into Sage so that you can process that as a receipt against that invoice document for that customer. So all that process probably takes, and you'll do your own math on this, but I'm guessing somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes to do that process. And maybe that's on the light side. You'll be the judge of that. So if you start to think about, okay, how many of these things do I do in a month? So let's just, for argument's sake, let's say you do 100 of these a month. Maybe that's high, maybe that's low. Again, insert your own numbers here and figure out what that's going to cost you. And let's also say that you're paying somebody in that position. Maybe it's a $50,000 a year fully burdened employee. And if you consider how much time that's going to take, let's take the median of between the 5 to 10 minutes to do this transaction, say it's 7.5 minutes. That's about 12.5 hours a month to do just that one thing. And if you extrapolate that out over the course of a year, you're probably looking somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 a year just to do that one function of collecting that customer payment. Well, the customer portal doesn't cost that much. So pretty easy math from that standpoint to figure out that this is paid for itself very quickly. And again, you'll insert your own numbers in that calculation, figure out what that is, and then you can judge from there whether or not it's a cash positive kind of an investment to make. But there's all kinds of other benefits that come from this that aren't just the time you save. I mean, you get paid faster, so you get the use of your money a lot quicker. It increases your cash flow, and of course, cash is king in most businesses. So all of this stuff lends itself into, how does this pay for itself? What's the return on investment for doing something like this? And we haven't even begun to talk about perhaps now you offload the actual printing of invoices to mail to customers. So all the printing and the folding and the stuffing and the stamps and all the postage and the cost of all that paper and all of that stuff, as you start to factor all that in, this makes a lot of sense very easily and very quickly. So let's take another quick poll here, and perhaps you guys can fill in the blanks here afterwards. But how much time does it actually take you? And you might be guessing at this, maybe you actually have some hard numbers, but how many payments do you take in a month from a particular customer? Is it less than 50? Is it between 50 and 100? Is it more than 100 in a month? So, once you start to see how these numbers add up, you're going to get a sense of how much this is actually going to be of value to you. So let's give it another minute or another few seconds or so to get everyone to answer. And then, okay, great. Got all the answers there. I think we're good. So it looks like most folks are spending or are doing more than 100 payments per month. So the numbers start to add up a lot faster. And so as we start to look at this, let's look at what a couple of our customers have actually told us about how this is benefiting them. So the top one is an actual end user type customer. This is somebody in the pharmacy business. They save a minimum. And after speaking to them after the fact, they said this is actually probably on the low side, but a minimum of one full-time equivalent employee just from that payment processing side of things alone. The second quote here comes from another Sage ISV or publisher, and they've been around a long time, probably almost as long as we have, or as long as we have. And there's a lot of customers using Sage 300 that use their products. We built them a portal where Sage partners can go on and get the renewals for their customers, find out who their customers are, get the activation keys for their products, and pay the renewal invoices. So this publisher, this Sage 300 tech partner, as we're now called, actually uses our portal for their Sage partners to do that. So, and again, you can see what Steve is saying here. They save at least 2 days a month, and now they can devote that time to doing other more valuable things within their business. So customers are actually coming to expect this, right? I mean, the pandemic probably accelerated this a lot because nobody could go into the office. Everyone was working remotely. They needed to have access to their stuff, and they want it when they want it. And this was actually happening even before the pandemic. There was a significant trend toward people wanting to do this, and it's probably because, in our personal lives, we've got the marketplaces like Amazon and things like that, right? We're just accustomed to going on, finding out what we want to find out when we want to find out about it. And we don't want to have to wait until your office is open so that we can talk to somebody. And in fact, what we call these kind of low value customer interaction things, these are things that the customers want to do for themselves. And you don't get necessarily a significant amount of value with that customer interaction. It's just an administrative type task. So by offloading that, you give the customers what they want. So it gives them a great customer service experience, and as a benefit, you're saving all that administrative overhead for dealing all that. And we already talked about, eliminating the paper and the saving the time and the money and all that, right? So it starts to add up pretty quickly that this makes a lot of sense. So there's a few different ways that you can deploy a customer portal for this AR automation process we're talking about here. And the most basic one is our click to pay. And I'll show you this live in the actual product, but it's just a means for a customer to click on their invoice, a link in their invoice, and pay it. Simple, no login, nothing like that required. Dead simple for them to do it. But then it goes into the full-on portal where they get access to, well, whatever you want to expose to them. And it's up to you which documents you want to expose to them, and which of these components you'll get will depend upon the subscription that you opt in for. So there's a basic one plus 2 optional add-ons that I'll talk about when I get into the live presentation. And one of those add-ons is this quick order entry form. So this is aimed at your AR customers, someone you do business with on a regular basis. It's not a web store. If you need a web store, we have a fully integrated web store to Sage 300 that we can deploy for you. This is strictly a customer portal and a quick OEs, like an order entry form. The portal itself doesn't have any data, so we have to read this live out of Sage, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail when we talk about it. But this form kind of assumes that your customer knows a little bit about what they want to buy, and they can search for it in an intelligent manner. And I'll show you this live as well when we get into the presentation. So the customer portal itself is very simple to use, and you'll see that when I go through the presentation. I'll start with the customer-facing side. We wanted to make it super intuitive, so it didn't require training for you to get your customers to use it, and I think that'll be clear once you see it. And once you get it set up, you really don't have to mess with it. It just does what it does. We have a component we call Connect, and it's just a web service, and it sits on your Sage 300 server where the data lives, and waits for us to ask it a question, and then it queries Sage and brings back the answer and posts it on the screen. So the portal itself doesn't have any data. It reads and feeds live to and from Sage 300. So you don't have to upload anything or download anything from the portal. Once it's installed, we have a live read of the data. If it's in Sage, we have access to it. We can display it for the customer if you want them to see it. And we do consume a Sage user license in the process, so do bear that in mind. Later versions of Sage have the ability for you to reserve a user license for a specific user, so that would be ideal. And we always have one, because what you don't want is for your customer to try and log in and get an error message saying, sorry, you can't log in, try again later. So anyway, that's just sort of like the preamble to what the portal is all about. So enough of that. Let's actually have a look at the product itself. So let's start with the click to pay. And click to pay is really just the ability for you to embed a link either in your invoice document, so the crystal form that lives right inside of Sage, or you could put it in the email that goes out to them, or we've just mocked it up here on a Word document so we can show you what the link looks like. So if you can see that, hopefully it's not too small, but that is really just us, the link directing to the URL, and that's going to be your domain. So it's going to be maybe portal.mydomain.com or whatever it happens to be, right? You get to choose what that is. Chances are you already own the rights to those subdomains. So that's no additional cost for you. It's just a matter of selecting it and telling us what it is. And from that, we also direct it to the customer number and to the invoice number, the document in this case. And with that, the customer gets this. They simply click on that. And basically what it does is it pops up this screen that allows them to pay that invoice document. So remember I said we have no data. So this slight pause you're seeing here, that's us querying Sage and bringing back this result. So we had the customer number, we had the invoice number, we filled in after we queried Sage the customer name, the invoice date, and the amount. And from a customer perspective, all they need to do is click pay and off they go. Now, depending upon what your merchant account is set up to support, we can do credit card or we can do ACH. So that's a function of the merchant account. And again, we're now part of Evo Payments. So we would set you up with an Evo Payments merchant account. And we do have some of the best rates out there and the best support out there. So that should be a good thing. You'll notice that this is editable. Now that's an option you can turn on and off. In most cases, we would suggest folks just keep that turned off, because one of the reasons why people get the portal is to offload some administrative burden, right? If you allow someone to part pay, you've just created one that you then have to deal with. So, we recognize there are legitimate business reasons why someone might want to do a partial payment. So it's there as an option for you to turn on and off. So from a customer perspective, all I need to do is click that pay invoice button, and then up pops the payment gateway to allow me to enter my card details. Now, what's happened here is we've now temporarily left the portal. We've popped open this iframe, which is in the credit card processor gateway. This is an Evo Payments gateway. And so from a customer perspective, I'm entering my card details not in the portal, but on the payment processor's gateway. So the implications of that is neither the portal nor you by extension has any PCI compliance concerns, because it's the credit card processor who's dealing with this, and that's what they do. That's their daily life. They have all the proper security protocols in place. They deal with it. It's not your concern. And so from a customer standpoint, I just hit that pay button. So we're sending this transaction now off to the payment gateway, and hopefully we get back a positive response that says the money's there and it is yours. And here's an on-screen receipt that we will display for that customer. Now, optionally, at the same time, we can send an email, and you'll determine this in the setup, to the AR email address that sits in that customer account in Sage with this same information via email instead. Also, internally, you can get that email notification as well. So you can get a notification internally by email, and we would suggest a distribution list. You can get it by a Microsoft Teams team notification, or you can get it by a Slack channel. So again, you set up the folks who are inside those. If you're using either of those two tools, you can get instant notifications that this has happened. So if you happen to be in a collection proceeding with a customer, you want to know immediately when they pay, that's an instant notification that you can get that they have paid. And it's what they paid, how much they paid, and by what method. So and that at the same time, we send that transaction, that receipt, directly and appended into a Sage AR receipt batch. And that batch is specifically there for credit card purposes. So if there's not a batch available for credit card transactions, we will open one and we will append to that batch. So from your perspective, this entire payment is automatic. You didn't have to do anything to complete it except post that batch. And when that's done, everything is reconciled in the back end against the customer, against the document, and against the bank. So it's essentially done. There's nothing that you had to do to manage that transaction. And that's the click to pay part of things. And if that's all you want, that's fine. That's easily implemented, and we can certainly do that. But of course, there's an entire portal that's behind this as well. And so I'll just show you what that looks like. So this is the login page to the standard portal. And I'll just point out a couple of things here on this front page for you. First of all, we support both English and French. So, excuse me, if you wanted your customers to be able to look at this in French, they can certainly do that. We'll change everything that we control. So you'll notice all the labels have changed, all the titles have changed, that kind of thing. This is not controlled by us. This is controlled by you. Also, we'll attempt to drop a cookie onto the customer's machine if they do accept them. That way, when they log in next time, they're going to see their French language. So if you do need another language, it's a relatively easy task for us to change the language file, and you can have that language. And as I mentioned, this is controlled by you. This is your welcome message to the customer, and there's an admin login sort of to the back end of this where you control all this stuff. But again, once you get it set up, you typically don't have to go back in there and mess around with it. This up here, you also control. This is going to be probably your logo, and there's a lot of real estate here. So if you wanted to do some messaging, you could just include it up here. If your logo happens to be that long, that's great. You also control all this down here. Yeah, so that's the stuff that you're going to control on this front page. Now, the way folks get registered for the portal is a few different ways. So number one, if you want to do it all, you can, but that's the most work. So you would go in and you create the users again in that admin backend I spoke about, and I'll give you a quick look at that toward the end. You'd go in there, you create the username, the password, you'd send it to them, say log in, ask them to change it the first time because they want to have their own private password. So that's one way to do it. The way I think most folks do it is they let the customer self-register. And what they do is they'll come in here and they'll use this screen. So they'll create a username. And you can have more than one user on any one AR customer in Sage. So you can have multiple people that your customer is doing this on behalf of them. They do need to know their AR customer number. We do ask for a bit of verifying information here on their account, and there's 5 different questions we'll ask, and I'll give you a look at those once we pop into the back end. And then they'll create their password. And once they do that, one of 2 things can happen. They can go into the portal and wait for you to authorize them, which means there's a bit of work on your side to do that, and it's easy enough to find those folks that have registered. I think what most people will do is give them automatic access. And the way we do that is if this question gets answered correctly, then we can give them immediate access to their account. And when that happens, you do have the option as well to send an email, again, to that AR email address that sits inside of that customer record. Send them an email saying this user has registered for access to your account. And that way, if they, for some reason, didn't want that to be the case, they can inform you can easily turn them off. It's just click of a button, they're done. So that's, I think, the way that most people will get registered in here, because it's no work on your behalf and they get automatic access to the portal. I think all you need to have to do in the beginning is inform them that you have a portal, please go here, register, and you're good. So that's the registration bit. I want to show you, first of all, the customer-facing side of the portal, and I'll log in as a customer here. Oh, and incidentally, if they want to just click here to pay that invoice, they'll just get that similar click to pay screen. They enter the invoice number, their customer number. We'll go search, make sure it's there and available to pay, and they'll come back and be able to pay it. So they don't have to log in for that. They do have to log in, however, to see all these other bits on the portal. So first thing that could potentially happen is we can pop up this message, and this is a one-on-one message. So from you to that specific customer. And that's controlled here inside of Sage 300. And we happen to have this one on the Azure platform that's backing up our portal. So what we did inside of comments is we created a comment type called web and web acknowledge. So this message here is this message here. So what we did is when they logged in, we went and looked, is there a comment type called web? And if there was, we brought it and brought it up on the screen for them to see. So whatever you might want to communicate to them, happy birthday, or the credit card on file is expiring soon, or whatever, anything that you want to communicate to that customer, you can. When they click OK, I'll talk about that in a second. What happens is, and let me just navigate away and back, we then change it to acknowledge. So we know, that they have seen that message and they've acknowledged it. And so you can keep, a running, total of different messages that sit inside this particular screen here. So that kind of demonstrates our live read back and forth of data from Sage. So that is the one-on-one message. This one, we call it a broadcast message, and this goes to every customer. So where this is controlled is in that portal admin side that I talked about again, and I'll show you that again when we go into that and have a quick look there. But, this might be a change in policy communication, or as, hold over from COVID-19 days. This was our COVID policies and such. So again, when they click OK, flags it as being read for that user. It doesn't come back up again to bother them every time. So that's the messaging that can happen and how it's controlled. These are the various different functions or icons that you can have. And I've got everything installed here, and it really comes in 3 different components. So number 1, it's the standard portal, which is the baseline. You need that for anything. And that includes the account activity, the view transactions, the view orders, and the contact us. Then there's an optional add-on to do the online payments, which would include the pay account, prepayments, and the managed credit cards. And then the third optional add-on is the order entry. And that's that quick OE screen that I showed you just a screenshot of, and I'll give you a live view of that in a moment here. So that's the 3 different levels, and all the pricing is published on our website. It's in our brochures online, and it's on the Sage 300 price list. So your Sage partner would acquire it on your behalf for you, or what's known as an endorsed product with Sage. And that means that your Sage partner buys it from Sage just like they would any other Sage product. So, and it also means that we've gone through Sage's penetration testing in order to qualify to be on the price list. So that we've gone through their testing to know that we're a secure application. So just to give you a quick look at what's in all of these different icons. So first of all, this is just summary level information on the account. Here's my last few payments. my last few invoices, how much do I owe, just general information on here. If I wanted, I could go back to the icons by clicking on the image up here, or I can use the menus to navigate around. This one displays all of the transactions in Sage for this customer, anything that's in Sage. Again, doesn't matter when you installed it. If it's in Sage, we can show it up here for your customers. Now, you do have the option to turn any of these document types on or off in the back end so that they just won't display here. So, some folks don't charge interest, so just turn it off. It's not an option on this list. It doesn't show up in this list. But from here, your customers can actually navigate down and just filter this down to the documents that they're interested in. And if they want to, I just want to see open documents. So here's the only outstanding invoice for this customer. So they have the ability to do that. You have the ability to filter this down to only those documents that you want to display for that customer. Now, I do know that this is an AR document, an AR invoice document. So it's going to display whatever data we find inside of accounts receivable in this layout. So think of this as like a crystal report, only we've done it in HTML. And all these areas here, these are just data elements that we just fetched from Sage and put back on the screen for the customer to have a look at, right? That's all we're doing here. So that was an AR document. Here's an OE document. So this is an order entry invoice that has a bit more information because order entry, of course, has a bunch more information available to it. So we display that information. Now, if they want to get a reprint of this invoice, they can do so from here. This is the standard invoice layout that we send out. This, of course, will be your logo here. We do say this is a web copy so that if this doesn't look exactly like the document that you print out of Sage, they're going to know, right, I got this from the portal. That's why it's not an identical replica. So that's how they can get a reprint. So anytime you get those calls saying, oh, I didn't get my invoice, can you resend it to me? Once they get accustomed to using the portal, they know they can come here and get it. So you can offload that administrative task as well to your customers. And again, as we said before, they expect to be able to do this, so that's nothing new. The pay account part, which is probably the biggest reason that most folks will get the portal, this allows them to make that online payment. So we saw it through the click to pay. Here now would expose all open invoice documents. So if there was multiples in here, they wanted to pay them all, they just click the select all button, or they could just multi-select the ones that they wanted to pay. Again, this is turned on, but you can turn that off. It's either pay it all or don't pay it. If you've got a dispute with the invoice, let's talk about it. Let's resolve it, but pay it or don't pay it. I don't want a partial payment. Up to you. When they make that make payment button, this exposes a bit more potential stuff here as well. So number one, we do have the ability to store a credit card token. And again, this is okay for us to store for PCI compliance. We only ever get this masked screen or credit card number. We never get the full number, nor do you. So again, that's stored in the credit card vault. All we get is that token, which is only good for this customer to pay you. That's all it's good for, and we're allowed to have that. So if they used a card and chose to store that card and use it in the future, and they hit that make payment button, the next thing they see is the receipt. And the emails happen and the notifications happen and it gets appended into the AR receipt batch. All that stuff happens, but they don't have to enter their card details because we already have that, or that is to say that the payment processor already has that and we can process that way. If they wanted to use the ACH, then they'll enter their transit number, branch number, account number, all that stuff, and the same kind of process happens. This is where they'll say, I want to use a new card and I'd like to save that new card. And so that way, it ends up sort of in this bucket here, as these are the cards that I have on file that I can use to pay you. And this really just displays those cards. They can delete them here. They can't add them from this screen. They get added from the pay account screen, as you just saw. Now, there is another option for making payments, and that is to make a prepayment. And there's a few different ways that you can make a prepayment in Sage 300. So number one, they can do an unallocated cash payment, which means they're just going to give you some reference and the amount they want to pay, and it's just going to go and sit on the account until you apply it to something. Maybe it's a prepayment on an order, in which case you would use this. I want to prepay on this order, and I want to prepay, either all or some of it. And that's going to sit right on that order as a prepayment. So when that order turns into an invoice, you've got a payment on there. You can capture those funds and go ahead and send that order straight into fulfillment. We can also do the same thing on quotes, but as you might know, there's no real place in a quote to place that like there is in an order. So we put it in a reference field so you know it's there. And then you can use that as you turn that quote into an order. And you'll know that there's money sitting on that quote ready for you to apply it. So those are the three different ways that you can accept money from a customer on a prepayment, either quotes, orders, or unallocated on the account. Let's take a quick look at the view orders. So there's a few interesting things going on inside the view orders screen. So first of all, we can look at this by the orders that are outstanding or by the items. These are the products that I'm waiting for on orders with you right now. So it's kind of like a back order list, I guess. If you look at this from the order standpoint, now we can see all the order types that Sage supports, and we support all of these. So quotes, orders, standing orders, what else? Future orders, they're all supported. If you've got them in Sage, we can serve them up for the customer to see. Here's a quote that, now there's a few different ways that this can happen. So let me just talk about that for a minute. So you can use this order entry screen here, which I'll show you in a minute, to have customers or even your internal staff to create quotes or orders or both. It's up to you which of those things you turn on. If you use it for a customer to place a quote, let's say, what happens is they'll go in and they'll select the items that they want to do, and they'll end up with a quote in the system. Now that quote is sitting there waiting for someone internally to review it. And once they review that quote, then its status can change to, let me just filter this down so I can find one that's been approved. Here's one that's approved. Okay, so here's a quote that's been approved. So let's say the process was your customer went in, created a quote through that order entry screen. It went into your system and somebody internally reviewed it, made any corrections, added anything they needed to add, and then flipped the status to approved. Once it's in that approved status, your customer, when they're in the portal, can look at it, go, yep, like that, all good. They click that button and they can turn that into an active order just by clicking that confirm button. Now this can be in the system ready to fulfill. So that's one possible way to do it. Another way you might use this is you might have one of your internal staff create a quote for a customer. They come in here and look at it, and then they approve it to go from there. So that's kind of an interesting feature. So all that stuff is supported inside of here, and that's how you might want to use it. Depends. So I know some folks are using this for their sales staff or customer service staff, because we do have a sales rep login, as we call it, but it could be any internal sales or any internal customer service staff or staff member logging in. The only difference is that when they first log in, we ask them which customer they want to work with. And we can restrict that down to only those customers where they are listed as one of the 5 salespeople on that customer record. If you understand what that is, there's a 2-digit code on every customer where you can assign a salesperson to it. So if they're not on that customer account, they can't see them through that battery. There we go. Okay, so let me go into the order entry screen. So this is what the quick order entry form looks like. And this can collapse up and down. And incidentally, all of these screens work on a mobile device just as well as they do on a 26-inch or 30-inch monitor. You notice we didn't just squash the things down. We actually rearranged the screen. We can actually collapse this menu to take up less real estate on the screen. So that kind of thing works. We've changed the menu to the fold-out menu. And this is the same on any screen in the portal that you're in. So it works very well on any device or on any large screen monitor. So remember, we've logged in as, I guess this is Winnie Norman here. We know we have the context. We know what's in their account. We know their ship to addresses. We can give them the ability to add a new one if they want to. We can allow them to enter a PO number, request a delivery date, enter some shipping comments or instructions. All that kind of stuff is possible here. That's going to end up on the order. In the item selection here, so if you recall way back in the beginning, I said they needed to have some idea about what they want to have or some familiarity. And I think what we sort of conceived of this to be is just like customers who buy from you on a regular basis. They know what they're going to buy, either by its description or by its item number. So they need to type in at least 3 characters of the item number or the item description. We also will search those 4 additional item information lines in inventory control. And if you're using it the customer item number as well. So that will map to your internal item number. So in my case, let's say I'm looking for something to do with desk. I type that in, I either hit enter or that finder will run out to Sage inventory control and find anything that has that in the description, in the item number, in any of those other fields that I mentioned. And so from a customer standpoint, if I just want to do quick order entry, and I don't even have to touch my mouse if I don't want to, I can just go ahead and type it that way and hit the select and go ahead and do it entirely keyboard driven. If there are different units of measure, they'll be able to select that. If you're doing this for internal staff, you can make that an editable field as well, if you give them the ability to negotiate or offer discounts or something like that. So that's how they could quickly get an order in there. If there's a little bit of uncertainty about what it is they want to order, let's say I'm not entirely familiar with the inventory. Maybe there's a new product I'm not entirely familiar with. So what we can do is display, oh, that's not a very good image, picked the wrong item. But anyway, you can display images from that product. And here's those 4 additional item information lines I spoke about. We'll now display those as well for that customer to look at. Here you have different units of measure that we can buy. And I can add it that way. So you have those kind of 2 different ways that you can have customers place orders. And when I hit that place order button or place quote button, and again, you can turn either or both of these on or off, have only just place order or have only place quote or allow both. That's really up to you and how you want your business process to work. But again, that's going to end up directly into Sage. Let me just I'm going to place an order. That's going to end up directly in Sage as an active order. Now, in this case, we put it into Sage on hold, and that's an option you get to select as well. Because most of the time you want to get eyes on it to make sure that somebody hasn't done something foolish, or maybe there's other things that you need to add in, like shipping costs or those kind of things. So immediately I can have a look at that order in the portal. So this was automatically fed back to the portal, right? Because we're reading it live. And there's that order sitting inside of our portal display here. So let me just refresh this, and you'll see that order sitting on top there. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. It should be on view orders. Pardon me. And this is that one, I believe. The one I just ordered. So again, it's a live read of the data. So as soon as it's there, it's available for us to read and serve up to that customer. And that was pretty much the entire customer-facing side of this. I think time's still okay, and I can give you a quick look at the back end. I see a question here. Wanted to see what happens if I select ACH. Let me quickly do that for you. This screen pops up. It's just different data that it asks for. So we're going to do checking savings account. We need to enter the account number, the routing number. This is the information that we're asking for to do the ACH. So hopefully that answers the question for you. And that is a function of whether your merchant account allows ACH processing. And generally speaking, that's not a tough thing to do. You just need to tell them or tell us that that's what you'd like to have happen. So let me now log in to the back end and give you a quick look. And I don't want to go through all the nuts and bolts of it. I just want to give you a quick look at some of the, I think, are the cool things back here. But if you want to have a look afterwards at more detailed stuff, I'm happy to do that for you. So first of all, when you log in as the administrator or the owner of the portal, you'll first of all be shown this dashboard. And the dashboard basically tells you how things are going or what's going on inside your portal. So number one, how many payments am I taking today, month to date, year to date, last year? Essentially, it tells you, is this thing working? Are people using it? Am I collecting money? How well is it doing? And also by the same token, how many people are users? Users or customers? Remember I said you can have more than one user for any one AR customer. That's what this is. And this tells me how many people are actually logging in and using my portal. This bit down here, now for demonstration purposes, we keep a number in here just to explain what's going on, but it should be 0 because we are reading this data live from Sage 300 and feeding it live. And the only reason this would be anything but 0 is because when we started the payment transaction and when we got the post back, something happened at that point where we couldn't connect. So been an interruption in the communication, whatever that was. And usually I talked about that connect service we mentioned earlier. Perhaps that got turned on. Maybe your power went out. Maybe the internet went down. It's a very slim chance that that's going to happen, but it certainly is possible. So we do need to accommodate for that. And really what this means is it's not like you didn't get the money. That's already taken care of. We just weren't able to insert it into Sage to finish that transaction, right? To do all the appending into that AR receipt batch. So what we'll do here is you just hit that process button and we'll send them right back in again, assuming we have connection at that point. Now, on that note, I'll talk about that in a second. So here's that broadcast message I spoke about in the very beginning. This is where you control that. And you can put start and end dates. You can turn it on and off. It's done from here. And these are all the users that are registered for this portal. And you remember at the beginning, I said, if you wanted to control the whole thing yourself, this is where you're going to do that. And this is where you're going to control the user type. So if it's a salesperson, that's your internal staff. If it's you as the administrator, or if it's a standard user, that's the three types that you would create. But again, I think in most cases, folks let their customers self-register because that's less work for you. And you have great filter capabilities here. So if you ever need to locate a customer, it's easy to do so. And again, back at the very beginning, when I said, if we give them automatic access, but if that AR customer came back and said, no, turn them off, you just come in here and turn them off. Pretty simple. The receipts here, this is where we record all of the transactions that have been made or have been attempted to have been made on the portal. This is that last one I just did, but didn't finish on that ACH. Didn't finish it, so I just bailed out of it. That's what it's telling me here. This is the one that I did this morning that actually went through and it was inserted into that AR receipt batch in Sage. So this one's done, and here's all the data. Now we show it here, but your admin portal on the Evo payment side of things will also have this information and probably more detail than this. But we wanted to make an easy place for you to actually find this information, and here's where you're going to find it. And again, lots of filtering capabilities, so you can always find a payment by when it was made, how much was paid, document number, customer number, all that. So if a customer ever contacted you and said, I made a payment, I don't see it, you can find it in here, and perhaps they started the process but didn't finish it, but it'll be in here, so you can always find it. The portal settings, this is where at the very beginning I said your logo, you just point to a new image file and it shows up there. Simple. Here's those 5 questions that you can ask for that automatic access to the account. So these are specifically to that AR account. They would have to know these answers in order for us to give them automatic access. And here's where you turn on that self-registration and auto approval here. And actually, you can turn your whole portal off here as well. And if you want to control which customers can have access to this, there is a flag or a checkbox, I think, on the AR customer record. I think it says allow on web. If you want to control customer access that way, you just turn this on. And this is your welcome message, your address, all that stuff. Pretty simple stuff to change here. When I said before that you can control which documents the customer will see, you just turn them on and off here. Turn that off, hit save, they don't show up next time. The same holds true for the different icons. So number one, this will be controlled by the level of subscription that you get, but you can also more granularly control which of these icons you want to show up here. Again, I don't want to go into every feature and function. Notifications is another cool one that I like to show. So a few different ways that we notify you of things. Now, number one, if for some reason we cannot connect, excuse me, to your Sage, we need to tell somebody internally, because chances are it's that connect thing and you can turn that on and off. We don't have access necessarily. So we need someone to tell. So who is that? And do we inform them by email? So typically that would be a distribution list rather than an individual. Or what's the Slack channel, or what's the team's team that wants to be notified if we can't connect. And this is typically your technical contact internally. On the AR side of things, there's a bunch of notifications you can get. Same thing, to whom, by what method, and what are we going to tell them about? New user registered, new payment was received, somebody started to do something and didn't finish it, who do we tell? Same holds true on the order entry side of things. Who do we tell when an order was created? And we can send that to the customer as well as you internally. Who needs to be notified? There was a contact us button, icon on the very front screen. We saw that at the very beginning. who do we send that to, and what immediate response do we want to give the customer when they did that. And this is just a free-form text kind of fill in the blank, and that will go to whom and how. So I'm seeing a couple questions coming here. Just bear with 1 second here. And it automatically charge credit card processing fees. Oh, do you mean to recapture the fees? It's not built in yet. That's something that we are going to build in to the system probably in the next few months, I would guess. So that is to sort of recapture the fees. Now, you can do it at a flat percentage rate, I believe, and it has to be across the board on all customers. There are rules that the card brands put in place as to how this will be deployed, but that is coming. Do we need to open a merchant account with Evo if we want to use this portal for payments? Yes. We are owned by Evo Payments, and so their, I guess, edict to us is you sign up a new customer, and we need to sign them up for an Evo Payments account. Now, having said that, Evo Payments is a large entity. We do own the entire process front to back, meaning we are the gateway, we are the processor, and in the US, we even own the ACH process. What that means to you is we don't have anybody else to pay for our processing services. In many cases, some of the folks out there are actually just reselling somebody else's services, which means they have to pay for those services. We don't have that. So what that means is we are able to offer you probably the best rates that are possible for your payment processing fees. We also do have all North American-based support that's operating 24/7. So you will always be able to get access to support if you're ever having an issue. And I guess the other beauty of us owning the whole process, that we can't point the finger to anybody else. It's always going to be us. So that there's that one throat to choke, I guess, scenario that you often hear about. And that's not always the case with all the different processors out there. Again, sometimes they're just reselling other people's services, and it's easy to point to somebody else and say, it's not our problem, it's theirs, talk to them. We can't do that. It's always us. I think that's it for now. Hopefully that's answered those questions for you. These are the different notifications you can send to your customers. A new user registered, we spoke about that. An order was created, so you want to send them the details of that order that got created online, and a payment was received. We spoke about that in the very beginning as well. And there's lots of other settings in here, like there's a bunch of settings under the order entry tab, which I don't want to get into in too much detail. We guide you through all of this stuff in the very beginning. So we'll tell you what it means, how to set it up. Once it's all set up, again, you don't have to go in here and mess with it. It's essentially done. The portal just does what it does. As long as that connect component is running, you're in good shape, and it just does what it does. So you don't have to babysit this thing. So that is pretty much what I wanted to guide you through on the portal. So both the front end, the customer facing stuff, and on the back end, what you see, what you can control. And so with that, I'm going to sort of pop back into my slide deck and give you one more poll. Couple seconds to answer that one. If you're all still with me and paying attention, I guess part of the reason why you run a poll is to see if anyone's still paying attention, but I guess I'm getting questions, so that answers that question. So if you would take a second or two and just answer this one for me, appreciate that. Then we can move on to the next. So that's essentially it. I mean, hopefully you saw that there is some value in this for you. Obviously, you'll do the math based upon the discussion we had earlier about the time saving, the benefit of getting your money quicker, all of that stuff. Figure out if it makes economic sense for you to do this. It's a very easy install for us to do. And again, your Sage partner would acquire this on your behalf from Sage. It's what's called an endorsed product, sold directly through your Sage partner by Sage. And that's it. So, but we're here anyway. I mean, we'll help you through the entire process. We'll provide personalized presentations to your other staff internally if you want to answer any questions. So it's still, the responsibility is still ours to represent the product, answer questions. We do all our support, all our implementation, all of that stuff is handled by us. So it's always going to be North49 dealing with this for you. So last chance for any questions. Oh, there were a couple more. Hang on here. automatically charge credit card processing fees based on payment totals. I think we answered that. It's being built into the product, coming up in a new revision to the product in the not too distant future. Oh, sorry, I have answered these. Pardon me. Those are old ones. Oh, here's one more. Right. Can you use payments only service and not allow customers to place order in quotes? Yes, you can. You just wouldn't get the order entry part on that. That's an optional part that you would get. And if you don't choose that option, it doesn't show up for your customers. It doesn't show up for you. It's just not there. So yes, you can do so with that level of subscription. So you would just get the base portal, so the customer portal plus the online payments, and that'll allow you to do the click to pay multiple documents, look up all the documents online, no order entry capabilities whatsoever. That's probably the most common configuration that people will get is the standard portal plus the online payments. Most common configuration of the portal. Anybody else with questions before we let you go? Looks like we may be good. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Contact information is here should you need to reach out. If anybody has asked us to reach out, we will do so very shortly. And outside of that, the recording will be available should you want it. Please let me know and I will make sure you get access to it. We typically would post it on our YouTube channel. Let me know. I'll make it available. And thank you very much for your time.